Ahead.
Perfect. So for me, working at a bank, we basically have tons of crisis management plans in place for all sorts of things that come up. And of course, for us, the biggest thing is, well, robberies. They're not fun to go through, and I've been through a couple, but each year, all employees have to do training on crisis management and what to do in different kinds of situations, because we even get things like as bad as like bomb threats, all that good fun stuff. So for our crisis management plan, each branch actually has a captain. And for some reason, they decided to make me that captain or the leader. So I actually have to do additional training on the crisis management. And what's nice about our crisis management plan is there are actually cards that I can give out based on the situation to different employees that actually has a task for them, like call 911 or call corporate security, lock the doors, all that good stuff. So for us, it makes crisis management and the ability to communicate with my team members efficient. So even if I'm like panicking myself, I just had a gun in my face. So yeah. So for me, on a larger scale, crisis communication is important, especially when it comes to speaking with the media, things like that. It's like looking at the BP oil spill, like we've in the prompt, it takes an ethical leader to tell the truth about how it happened and why it happened, and to prevent, how they're taking steps to prevent it in the future. So for me, if a leader decides to lie or try to cover up their tracks like BP did in this case, it actually hurts them more in the long run, because eventually the truth is going to come out. And for them to, try to backtrack or cover up things, it makes them look worse in the end. So, yep.
So for crisis management, I think, you guys already have like a plan and everything set up just in case crisis has happened. I think that's like the first thing that's needed. Other things that I put that are needed, just constant flow of communication, being able to have leaders, communicate to any part of the branch or any part of the company, no matter what, I feel like is going to be like one of the biggest priorities. Other thing that I put that's pretty big is empowerment. I feel like, everybody needs to make their own decisions, or not everybody, but especially leaders need to make their own decisions in times of crisis, especially if they're established leaders in the organization. Being able to make decisions and get things done is going to be the first thing that's going to help you get out of that crisis. So empowerment was pretty big. The last thing that I put was, having your resources. That kind of goes like with your plan. Just having resources to go to, when things like this happen, you do need something to fall back on or something to get you out of it. You need resources. So having resources, people to go to. The book said, learn from the experience in the chapter. I think that a lot of crises or incidents like that, you can look at, you can look at previous instances like it in order to figure out your ways out of it. And that could be instances in your own organization or other organizations, not just your own. To communicate, empowerment, and having resources available to you.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Okay. So the prompt said, how can organizations prepare leaders at all levels to respond in a crisis? So I said by having a crisis management plan, which is what it mentioned in the book. But I think at all levels, like when I worked at Starbucks, this is the only time I think I've ever been through like somewhat of a crisis at a job. But somebody called the store right after we closed and said, they were outside with a gun, and if we didn't put our cash drawer outside the back door, I don't know, whatever. The manager is the one that answered the phone and took the phone call, but he had known about it for 30 minutes. We were still closing and didn't say anything to anyone. And then all of a sudden we were just what is wrong with you? Because he was acting super weird. And he was like, oh, this just happened 30 minutes ago. And we were all oh my God, what do we do? And he had been following some sort of a protocol and had already called off, but nobody else knew what to do. So I feel at all levels, everybody should know what to do in that situation. But at other jobs too, I've never really had any plan for any sort of crisis. So that's kind of strange because I feel you should have that. But so the piece in the book that the prompt was talking about with Tony Hayward and the oil spill. So he was like basically didn't care about any of like the victims that had family members die after that happened. And he was like, I need a break after all of this, and demonstrated like no responsibility for the incident. So he definitely didn't handle that well at all.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I actually talked to my dad for this because my dad was a fireman for 28 years and he was a captain for most of those. So I thought like, well, he would know crisis leadership well. And one of the things that we talked about, and it's actually in chapter 13 on the stages, it's the pre-crisis. He said that's what he did a lot, and that's what he did to prepare his crew. When you're going to the scene of a fire or an incident, whatever they got called on, the captain actually doesn't drive. He's in the passenger seat, prepping the crew, prepping what he needs to do, preparing himself mentally. And I thought that went really well along with the pre-crisis stage about not getting complacent. And with him, I talked to him about this. He said that was exactly the same, or what they had been trained. Because he says you can't look at a fire as just a fire, because it needs to be that specific fire, because there's so many variables in a fire, like the heat, the structure of the building, the like integrity, how good your crew is for that day. So we talked about how that was probably the most important way to train someone for a crisis, is getting them trained so that they know what to do in that situation, that they need to treat each situation differently. Because I'm sure, as Danielle can attest, every robbery is probably a little bit different, kind of the same in that they wanted the money, but a little bit different how they went about it and the feeling, because the person's different. So coming prepared, I think another way to train people for a crisis is having them know all the resources, like what Eric said. Because if you know your resources and you come in confident, I think those are pretty much the best things that you can do. And also what Isabel said with her shift manager, like he knew what to do. He should have said what was going on to the other people just to maintain a level of calmness. But anyway, so I think those are the best ways to train and prepare someone for a crisis, is with confidence, so they know what they're doing and that they'll be calm, and then knowledge of resources.
I think it also depends on like the industry you work in.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
As, like, yeah. I feel like I've just kind of been working in retail for the last I don't have like a specialty yet, like banks for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like there's not really much of a crisis that could happen in my workplace. I mean, of course there is, but nothing that I can honestly think of.
I would think with retail it'd be around Christmas time, because people are just monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Donnie.
Donnie.
All right, sorry, my dog's been annoying the crap out of me. If you couldn't tell. So yeah, like Caleb kind of said, having the pre-crisis plan is pretty important. I've worked at the company I'm with now for almost a year, and if something happened, I have not the slightest idea of what their crisis plan is. I'm sure they have it somewhere embedded in their giant homepage that I have no idea where it is. So yeah, just making sure you got a good pre-crisis plan put together, and then developing a good crisis management plan once you kind of figure out, what all the different crises that could possibly pop up. Just kind of a comparison with the BP thing. They definitely failed backwards, which we got to learn about in the book, blaming others, not taking responsibility and moving forward. The industry I'm in is transportation, and one of my franchises ordered about 50 more semi-trucks to their fleet than they really should have. And then the used truck market went south this past year, and they were stuck with all these assets. So when we went to meet with them, instead of, admitting, hey, we screwed this thing up, it was, well, this person suggested this person did that, and, none of it was actually their fault. You know, in reality, we were there to try to help them figure out how to move forward. All they wanted to do was tell us why none of it was their fault. So that's my comparison.
So for me, you know, I started as a barista at Starbucks and I became a shift supervisor, and then I stepped down when I did a lot of schoolwork. So at Starbucks, when you're a barista, the minimum crisis plans that you learn is like if there's a fire or, you know, that's about it. Like that's the thing that's pinned in our backboard. It's like, hey, you know, this is the location we go to if there's a fire. There's actually a crisis management packet, but a lot of people don't really look at it. They only look at like, oh, if it's a fire, let's go here. But as a shift supervisor, there's actually a whole chapter you learn about like crisis. So like robbery, fire, you know, what happens if someone's stealing and stuff like that. So like stealing product, not just money. So I've heard one of my friends was actually held at gunpoint to hand over the tills. And the one thing you do is just hand it to them. You know, the cool thing about that store is the safe was actually in the back room. So that the person that was there didn't even have to know there was a safe, but most stores have their safes up front. I don't know if I can say that. But, you know, they just come and look at, you know, they just want the money that's in the drawers. That's about it. And Starbucks is actually really good with the crisis management because they know how to lock away the things that are important, like the money wise, you know what I mean? Like the bigger bills. So I'm assuming you do the same, Danielle, at the bank.
Yeah,
you know?
we do exactly.
So that's the really cool thing about Starbucks is that they do have a crisis management plan when it comes down to money. When it comes down to like stealing product or something, it's mainly just like you can try to confront them if you want to, but if it happens, just let them go. You know what I mean? You don't want to make a big scene saying, hey, you know, you just stole from us. Like, what is your deal? And this, and that, because you probably could have seen them stole something, but then also like they probably put it back or you didn't see them that like you probably saw something else. You know what I mean? So it's important that like as a shift supervisor that you learn these things. And like you said, Isabel, like I really think the first thing that person should have done was call the police. And it just like really kept them to themselves. I was like, what? I would have been like freaking out if someone made that thing. I would have like immediately called the police. I was like, sorry, but they were kind of dumb on keeping it to themselves.
I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. I'm just sitting here kind of thinking about what just happened. And I'm like, you've been sitting there for like 20 minutes. You haven't said anything to anybody. Like,
My thing is like, what if they walked outside, like somebody walked outside to take out the garbage or something? There's
Right.
standing out there.
Well, it's important at Starbucks that we do not take the garbage out when it's dark outside. That's a reason why. They have like, people don't see it as crisis management plans, but they are crisis management plans when they're like, don't take the garbage out when it's nighttime. Or, you know, you can't count tills at a certain time, you know, or like, you know, you can't be handling money when the drivers are in. And it's really weird, like when the drivers are in and dropping off the product, because those are people that don't work for the company. They kind of do, but they also deliver other things. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's kind of the pre-crisis thing, I feel like.
yeah, so they definitely do have a pre-crisis plan, but a lot of baristas don't know that it's a pre-crisis plan. I know because I was a shift, but you know, when they ask about why it's like that, I just let them know, you know, this is if like we ever get robbed or something like that. So it's always good to communicate of why you can't take the garbage out at night, because people question, hey, let's take the garbage out. I'm like, no, you're good. Don't worry about it. Wait until there's daylight. They can do it tomorrow if anything. So that's what I have. Just effective communication and, you know, especially being taught like what needs to happen. Managers are really good at that. They definitely teach you what to do, especially if like something like that happens. And like I said, shift supervisors know more than baristas, but I feel like baristas can learn a little bit more in regard to the situation. Alrighty.
Whatever